Welcome to this very rare Saturday video from Unapologetically Progressive. Now, I don't usually make videos over the weekend, but I had a few moments and there are some things I think we need to talk about. For example, Elon Musk is trying to access the Treasury. Let me see here what it says. He's trying to access what is known as the Bureau of Fiscal Service. This is an organization here in the U.S. that pays our bills, basically. Pays out 88%, roughly, from what I've read, of the money owed to American people, vendors, and things like that. This includes Social Security, SSI, SSDI, Medicare, and other expenses that the federal government may have. And Elon Musk is trying to access this. This is your money. It's not his money. But what is he trying to access this for? He's doing it under the guise of trying to get rid of DEI in government. Trying to stop wasteful spending on DEI. Well, this isn't the place to do it. This isn't a political thing. This is just bills in, payments out. That's what this system is all about. Okay? That's it. There's no reason for Elon Musk to be accessing this system unless he has nefarious reasons to do so. And I can think of two big reasons why he would do this. One, to enrich his bank account by funneling money out of the Treasury into his businesses or whatever, right? Or he's trying to sell out the Treasury to Russia. After all, we found out that as of 2022, or shortly after the war with Ukraine began for Russia, all of a sudden, Elon became good friends with Vladimir Putin. And that's when he decided he wouldn't allow them to use Starlink, wouldn't allow the Ukrainians to use Starlink anymore for military purposes, because he decided that he was in love with Vladimir Putin. Sounds kind of like the President of the United States, right? He even turned off Starlink to Taiwan as a gift to Vladimir Putin, who wanted to give a gift to the president of China. So that's one of the things that happened, that's going on right now. The head of that bureau, or the Bureau of Fiscal, what was it called? Fiscal Service, has now resigned after this little kerfuffle with Elon Musk. And of course, somebody else is already being confirmed to take that job anyway. But that guy's been a civil servant for the U.S. government for 35 years and is set to retire. And so that's just one of the many things that Donald Trump has been doing. And it's absolutely terrifying as someone who relies on Social Security to live and relies on Medicaid to live. So I can understand why people would be scared about it. I understand why people would be upset about it. But I think more people need to understand what's going on. And I believe if more people understood what was happening, more people would be angry about this and they'd be in the streets protesting it. But the fact is, that's what the immigration raids are for, right? The immigration raids are out there. Why? To cover up what's actually going on, to distract everybody. They're like, look over here while we round up all these people, so you don't see what's going on over here. They're hoping we won't pay attention. They're hoping that we'll be so concerned about what they're doing to immigrants and what they're doing to the trans community that we'll forget the other things they're doing, or we won't see it, or we won't think it's so as bad. Now, there are other things going on too, right? Speaking of the trans community, The federal government has completely erased the trans community from all paperwork. When a bulletin went out over possible threats to Americans traveling abroad, especially to people in the LGBTQ community, they called it the LGB community. I want to make it very clear. The trans community is not going to be erased. We're not going anywhere. You can scrub that little letter off the end of everything, every piece of paper you put out, every warning you put out, from the State Department. You can do whatever you want. The trans community ain't going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We may be a very small minority in this country. Roughly, less than 1% of the entire population. But trust me, if you want to bring a war to our doors, we got you. I completely understand what's going to happen. See, I'm a history buff. I love reading about history and seeing the things that have happened in the past, especially World War II history. And you see, I know what you're doing. You're trying to erase us from public life. You're trying to make it seem as if we're a problem, that we're causing problems, and you're lying about our community. And there's a little mustache-wearing man from the 1930s during World War II who did the same thing to the Jewish people, and to the Gypsies, and to the LGBTQ community. But especially the Jewish people. The Jewish people were erased from public life, made to where they weren't allowed to own businesses. They couldn't exist. And then when he decided that wasn't enough, he started rounding them up. And I can tell you right now that's the direction he's going. Hopefully people will see what's going on before it gets to that point. Now, in Germany, no one knew what was coming. No one saw it, really, right? No one thought that kind of depravity could exist, that kind of a monster could be leading a government, right? No one thought that. They didn't have really a historical reference for that, because we didn't have, back then there wasn't information at your fingertips, right? It wasn't just, I'll look up on Google, right? That didn't exist. But we know better. We know what's coming. We see what's coming. And I guarantee you the trans community is not going to just sit idly by while you erase us from public life so you can try to make us as if we don't exist. That way, when we start getting rounded up and thrown into the back of trucks and hauled off to Guantanamo Bay like you're doing the immigrants, that we won't fight back. I may be disabled, but I can guarantee you one thing. I will not be easy for them to take. Make sure you're not easy for them to take. Speaking of immigrants, the supposed mass deportations have been underway for 2 weeks now. Just about. And we've got a few problems. I think it was like 46% of farming workers didn't show up in California. 26% didn't show up in Texas. You got a lot of plants that are a lot of crop that it's just going to have to be tilled under. That's going to raise your grocery prices. The immigrant roundup is also costing you millions of dollars as a taxpayer But I do want to talk about a few things. First, I want to talk about the fact that mostly the people that are being rounded up are people that already had deportation orders on them during the Biden administration. They just had not been located or had not been deported yet. But here's the problem, right? The reason the previous administration was not going after all these people, like as hardcore as they could have been going after them, was because they didn't want to rile up people. They didn't want to upset people. They didn't want to scare people. And they didn't want to accidentally start rounding up people who were legal citizens. I've already read of dozens of these stories of American citizens being rounded up by ICE and arrested by ICE just because they look like they're Hispanic. Does that make any sense to you? Like, why? In what universe does that make sense to round up Americans? There have been several instances of mistaken identity. There's been mistaken trips to houses, to wrong addresses. An entire family was harassed and arrested and put in handcuffs. And then ICE realized, oh crap, we're at the wrong address. This is why deportation usually takes longer. Because usually our government does a little more due diligence. And they're not doing that now. ICE is literally just looking at people saying, oh, you look Hispanic, so we're going to arrest you and try to deport you. A Puerto Rican family who was visiting mainland United States was arrested. And they attempted to deport them. Puerto Ricans are American citizens. That's just a fact. That is a fact. Puerto Ricans are American citizens at birth because they are part of the United States of America. We either need to treat these people with the dignity and respect they deserve as Americans, or we need to let Puerto Rico become its own country and leave it alone. In regards to immigration and the mass deportations, we've got massive protests across the country. People in the streets in Dallas, all the way, through Arkansas. I think I heard of one there, all the way off to California. There are people protesting in the streets. And I think it's reasonable. As much as I agree with making sure our borders are somewhat secure, I also believe that our current system does not allow for people to easily do it the right way. And I believe those are some reforms that need to be made. Lastly, in this video, I wanted to talk about what we on the left and what those of us that are sane need to be doing over the next few years. The fact is, what we've seen the last 2 weeks has been absolutely horrifying. But we don't know what we have to what exactly is going to lie ahead. But some things that we need to do on the left, we cannot focus on just Trump is bad, right? We have to focus on policy. We have to show how our way is the better way, right? We have to show that how our policies are better for the American people and how equality does not harm anybody. We need to point out how progressive policies can give people a hand up. That's what we need to be focusing on. Policies that make make it clear the stark difference between the MAGA Republicans and progressive and democratic politics. I believe our policies do better to help people. We have better outcomes. Donald Trump has even said in the past that our economy does better for everybody under Democrats. He said that before, back in 1999. And so it's not that hard to show that we do better, that our policies do better when it comes to the economy and helping pull people out of poverty. Here's the thing. We can afford to help the poor if we quit giving welfare to the rich. Now, I'm not saying tax them to the point that they're no longer rich. Right? Even though I don't believe a billionaire should exist, I don't believe billionaires should exist while people are hungry and homeless. But I'm not even saying tax them to where they're no longer billionaires. Hell, I'm not even saying tax them at 70 to 90%, which was the going rate from like 55 to 70 or through 79, right? But just make them pay their fair share. They shouldn't get all these loopholes that allow them to keep all their money, right? Billionaires did not become billionaires because of just themselves. Take Elon, for example. Elon has become the richest man in the world, mostly because of subsidies he's been given by the federal government. Billions of dollars in subsidies to help subsidize Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company. Meanwhile, when you or I ask for help, we get read the Riot Act. We're given the third degree as if we're trying to steal money. Yet these people, these billionaires, are able to get subsidies from the federal government without even as much as having to go through any kind of background checks. All they have to do is say, oh, I have this business and I want money. And the federal government, whether it's a Democrat in office or a Republican in office, will bend over backwards to make sure they get that money. Yet, if you go seek for food stamps or housing assistance, they treat you like you're doing something wrong. They want access to every penny you've ever spent of your Social Security money. When I was leaving a apartment complex for handicapped people back in 2020, shortly before that, they were talking about how they wanted us to start saving all our receipts to show them everything we've ever spent. And that's ridiculous. People don't seem to understand what you got to go through sometimes to recertify your housing assistance for HUD. They literally take 6 months of your bank statements, and they want to see all of it. Everything you've ever spent your money on. No matter how personal that expenditure may have been. Then they wanted to start seeing receipts. And then we moved because we didn't want to put up with the BS anymore. Although life would be a lot easier if we were getting assistance. But the fact is, the last 2 weeks have been designed to confuse us, to drain us of our energy, and to make us more docile. It's the whole point of the shock and awe campaign, right? It's what we did back in 2004 in Iraq, right? The goal was to make this big, extravagant, you know, attack that would make people just give up and quit. And that's what Donald Trump is doing right now. He wants you to quit. He wants you to give up. He wants you to feel like you can't go any further. He wants you to feel that you feel sick at the pit of your stomach, where you just don't feel you can go on. That's what he wants. Because once he breaks people, then there's no stopping it. And he knows that. All his little followers know that. The Heritage Foundation knows that. And that's why they're doing it the way they're doing it. Now, here's my suggestion. One, don't let him. Don't let him wear you down. Don't let him make you feel less than. What we have to do is we have to stand, we have to fight. However we can. If you can get out and protest and let your voice be heard, get out there and do that. If all you can do is post on social media because that's the energy you have right now, that's okay too. Other things you can do is call your congressional members, your senators, your House members, your state legislature members. Call them and let them know that you don't support what's going on. Those are some of the easier things you can do. Other than that, all I can say is just keep trying. Just keep moving forward, keep doing what you can. And anyhow, I'll see you down the road.